coming to Conversations with the Councilors. I feel honored and privileged. We have more attendees than almost every town council meeting, so I think we're on the right track.
It's more fun.
It's a lot more fun. We do have some snacks there, some non-alcoholic beverages, as well as a couple for just friends. And then we do have the bathrooms right there, and we have WCAT recording. So I wanted to just preface the meeting on the structure that we have here, and then we can go from there. We're lucky enough to have two other counselors here, a little more senior than me. I'm still kind of a rookie, but Tracey and Steve are, thankfully they're very willing and able to come here and give a little presentation. Tracey is on the Finance Committee, and we are lucky because we're getting a presentation. That's not your average experience at the Conversations with the Councilor. So we have a little presentation on the budget, fiscal year 2023. It is a lot, and there was a lot put into it. So we're just going to synthesize down to its nutshell, a high 30,000 level view of what Winthrop's budget really is, how it's structured. And then she'll give a presentation, and then it's then time, when she's done with the presentation, to ask questions and answers. So that should last around 10 to 15 minutes. Then Steve Ruggerio is lucky enough to be back from Italy, so have him here for this. So he'll be going over the trees and ordinances, some of the recent things that have come up, and also maybe even talk about the charter review suggested changes. And then I will be last, and if you guys are still interested in listening, I will talk about economic development in this town. Tony Marino and I just had a nice coffee together, and we're lucky to have a great town manager like that. He knows what he's doing, and so I feel like there's some positive change going on in town, and I want to keep that momentum going. The point of having this event is to have a little more relaxed environment, to have a little bit of dialogue. But if you guys could just give the counselors a few minutes to get their presentation, their spiel out, and then you guys can ask questions, and then we can just have a regular old-fashioned conversation. Does that sound good? All right, well then, without further ado, Tracey Honan, Councilor at Large. If you want a seat, you can sit right there, or you can, and if you need the microphones, you're right here. All righty?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Tracey Honan, Councilor at Large, and today I'm going to talk about, as John said, kind of a high-level view of the budget. Not details of the budget, just going to some of what makes up the budget, how it's proposed, and how we pass it. And it's for budget fiscal year 2023, and I'll talk about fiscal year and all that. All right, so just some definitions and abbreviations I'm going to use during my presentation. So when I talk about, and I know this is small, I thought it'd be on a bigger screen, my apologies. When I talk about TC, Town Council, TM, Town Manager. The fiscal year, of course, runs from July 1st to June 30th. So our fiscal year 23 started on July 1st of 2022. And I know that sounds strange to some people. Our fiscal year 23 started in July of 2022, but that's how it works. It starts at July 1st, it goes to June 30th. The Town Council, the TC Finance Committee. So the Town Council's Finance Committee is a three-member committee made up of town councilors. Three of the town councilors are appointed to the Town Council Finance Committee, and I am one of those three. And we're appointed by the Town Council President every 2 years. So the Town Council President has a term of 2 years, and every time a new one is elected, they select the Finance Committee. And I was chosen, as well as Rich Fusillo from, I think, Precinct 1, he's the chair, and Hannah Belcher from Precinct 3 down the point. And I'm going to preface this by saying I do not have a finance background. I'm not a finance person. I was appointed to the Finance Committee. So I'm doing my best. Finance Commission. This is an important commission. So the Finance Commission is composed of two separate groups. The Town Council Finance Committee, which is a three-member group I just mentioned, and also there's a Citizens Advisory Finance Committee, and that's a 7-member group, and they're also appointed by the Town Council President, Town Council. Town Council President puts them forth, and the Town Council votes on them. 7-member group of people from the community, usually people in finance experts, people with backgrounds in finance. It's their wheelhouse. And so we're lucky to have those citizens who have background in finance who have volunteered for the Citizens Finance Committee. And they act with the Town Council Finance Committee, and together we make up the Town Finance Commission. And we meet every spring to talk about the proposed budget. Expenditures for current operations during the ensuing fiscal year, as well as longer-term goals and capital expenditures. So it's kind of like capital plan, and I'll go into that as well. Responsibilities and sequence of events. So annually, town manager prepares a balanced budget for the ensuing fiscal year, as well as a 5-year capital expenditure plan. And at least 60 days prior to July 1st, that beginning of the fiscal year, he submits the proposed operating budget to the town council for the next year. The finance commission, that group of 10, so the citizens group plus the town council finance committee, we meet in the spring, we meet in April and May. So we get the town manager submits the budget to the town council hands it over to the commission. The commission meets for 2 months, April and May, about twice a week for about 2 or 3 hours at a time, and we talk about it. And we talk about proposed amendments, proposed recommendations, proposed changes we might have. And then the Finance Commission prepares a report and presents that report to the town council with the proposed amendments and recommendations, and the town council will vote on that to either accept it with recommendations, accept some of the recommendations, accept some of the amendments, and then the town council votes to approve.
We'll see you soon. Take care.
Let me see. I'm gonna, if anybody wants a presentation, I can send it out. Just email me at town.winthrop.ma.us and I can send you the presentation. There's some things that were kind of cut off at the end here. I did have I thought I had yeah, it's not there. Oh, here it is. Oh, part of it's cut off. So this is the actual place on the town website where you can actually see the plan, fiscal year 2023 in detail. So all the details. And I'm not going to go through too many details because it would take all my time. But if you want to see the actual plan and go through all the expenditures and the appropriations, it's all there. You can access it. All right. And then this year, the town council voted to adopt the FY23 budget on June 7th, and it went into effect July 1st. Just okay. So again, I apologize. I thought this was going to be on a huge screen. So this is just kind of a cut and paste from the plan. If you want to go on the website, you can see all these actual appropriations and expenditures. So appropriations are what we plan to spend money on. Expenditures, revenue is where the money's coming from. So appropriations, you can see the main appropriations, town departments, so police, fire, assessor's office, clerk's office. Last year it was about 13.5, this year it's about 13.6, 13 million. The school department is our largest expenditure, our largest appropriation. Last year it was about 22.8 million. This year, fiscal year 2023, it's going to be about 23.7 million. Non-departmental, last year about close to 18, and this year is about 18.5. What is non-departmental? Non-departmental are the charges and the expenses that we must pay to the state, and they can be found in something called a cherry sheet, and you can find that cherry sheet online as well. And examples of the charges, non-departmental charges, are MBTA charges, charter school tuition expenses that the town has to pay, registry of motor vehicle charges, mosquito spraying, all that kind of stuff. It's not to do with actual departments, but outside departments. And then there's non-appropriated appropriations, which is close to $1 million. It's going to be $1 million this year. It was close to $1 million last year. And you can see the percent change. It's pretty significant change in the non-appropriated. What's non-appropriated? Appropriations are for voc tech expenses. That went up significantly because they're building that new vocational technical school, and we've got a big bill on that. That was voted, I think, how many cities and towns voted on the vocational technical school? 13. And so we were one of those communities that voted on the new vocational technical school. It was passed, and so they're building a new voc tech school, and it's a lot of money for a lot of communities. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be fantastic, and we'll be able to send more kids from Winthrop to that voc tech school. I know a lot of people in town, send their kids there, and it's just been a real, it's been a fantastic thing for a lot of kids in town. As well as the voc tech expenses, non-appropriated costs can include shared energy costs, the fuel that we pay to keep the buildings, property insurance for town and school buildings, debt service payments for projects, both principal and interest. As well, a big one of non-appropriated charges, employee benefits, employee health insurance, more than 7,000, almost $8 million for employee health insurance. It's a lot, right? But we have a lot of people. As well, retirement costs, so pensions cost about $3.5 million. And lastly, the solid waste subsidy. We're still taking money, and even though we have converted the solid waste program to an enterprise fund, which should be self-sufficient, but we're still in that first year. So we did subsidize it, we are subsidizing it almost $1 million. And then the Parks and Rec subsidy, we're subsidizing Parks and Rec about $50,000. I'll get into a little bit what enterprise funds are later, but they should be self-sufficient, but sometimes they're just not. You know, Parks and Rec, they had a tough year, you know, and so do we want Parks and Rec to go away? Absolutely not. So sometimes we have to subsidize them. You know, we subsidized Parks and Rec this year, and we don't mind doing that when it's needed, even though it's an enterprise fund. Revolving funds are things that are also self-supporting, things like the E.B. Newton fund. So the E.B. Newton, the school, the big building, people pay rent in that building. And so those rents, that's how it's self-sufficient. So even though we'll budget, say for like the revolving funds, we'll budget about $200,000, but then you see $200,000 a year in revenue, that money comes back in. So even though we budget for it, it comes back in through revenue. So a balanced budget means the appropriations equal the revenue. And the budget has to be balanced. The town manager has to submit a balanced budget. The appropriations can't spend more than he's getting in. He can't, obviously. And that's important, and that's the tough part, you know, is estimating how much we expect to get in, and then how much we're gonna pay out to everybody that needs money. And each different department, the town manager works with the town departments and the school department, and it's a tedious, long process to do this budget. And this year, for fiscal year 2023, it was Terry Delahanty as the interim town manager. Tony Marino just started, but he started after the budget was submitted, but Terry Delahanty worked long and hard on this budget. And balancing a budget, you can see the total here for the total appropriations, a $71 million budget. And $71 million, that's a lot. It's a lot of revenue and appropriations to consider. You know, and Terry has a lot of background in a lot of things. I don't think finance is his first love, but you know, he stepped up and he did a great job, I think. You know, he's a lawyer, he's an officer, he's just an amazing guy. But this was tough, and he did it. He presented a balanced budget. So. Am I talking really fast? I'm a little nervous. Okay.
Doing fine.
Doing wonderfully.
I like it.
It's
I
a
like the
wonderful-
commentary too.
It's a wonderful pace there.
Thank you. People want to know, where's all the money spent? Where's the maximum of the money spent? Well, I'm going to give you the four top ones. So of course, school budget's a big one. It cost us almost $23 million last year. It's going to cost almost $24 million this year in FY23. Police is about, was 3.7 last year. It's about a little bit less this year, and I think that might be staffing. Usually when budgets go down a little bit, it's usually about staffing. You know, we're certainly not cutting police, but if they're not staffing and they're not fully staffed. Fire, kind of same thing, just about $3 million last year and about a little over $3 million this year, and then the DPW is about $1.5 million. Those are the big chunks. Obviously, it costs a lot, you know, to run schools, police, fire, DPW. Does that surprise anybody? I think that's pretty standard in most cities and towns, that those are part of the top four.
What is it by comparison to other towns of the same population, Tracy, as far as the school budget is concerned?
I don't
And
know.
the facilities that we have, is that part of the finance committee's study to see how it balances out, or?
We do not, we don't look at other committees, we don't look at other cities or town municipalities. It is a good question, it's something we could certainly bring to, so the Citizens Advisory Finance Committee, that group of 7 people that are finance people, they're a group that doesn't meet outside of the budget time, you know, but they certainly could, you know, and if we went to them with a task, say, hey, can we compare some of our costs to what other cities and towns, just, you know, do some projects. I'm sure that would be something good, because we meet, the Citizens Advisory Finance Committee meets for 2 months a year, April and May. They have talked about meeting outside of that budget time, but I don't think, in my time on the council, it hasn't happened. So I think it'd be a great idea for them to meet continuously to talk about those kind of things.
Well, you know, relative to, you know, teachers' unions and, you know, state mandates, et cetera, I mean, to compare that and how it works with similar-sized towns, you know,
And have a better
other
understanding.
places around the state. Right.
Absolutely.
I think there is a lot of comparison studies done. We're actually just hired someone to do a study on our payroll and how much we're paying everybody in the town. And so that is a study comparing ourselves to other towns.
Departmental, departmental.
But yeah, departmental, but we're not actually, you know, we're not paid you know, to like know this stuff. It's just, that's a kind of a deep level stuff that someone that maybe had gone to school for government might know. Yeah.
Mr. Schmidt?
So, Mass Association of School Committees and probably the Mass Association of School Superintendents probably has some of that kind of data. In general, I know from hearing Lisa's presentations, we have a hard time even having a basic needs budget. So most communities, if they have higher resources, have more money to spend.
You'll be curious to know how we compare about 71 million to other towns. Like, I think we're in the same ballpark as like Ipswich, or maybe a little bit less than Danvers. Is that right?
I don't have that.
Yeah.
I would imagine Danvers has a bigger budget,
Yeah.
Ipswich is a smaller town.
Mr. Dow?
Don't they usually break it down per student cost?
I think you're right, I think you're right. And that would be Lisa Howard, school superintendent. She is well-versed in all things schools and school budget. She'd be the person we.
Also, just to add to, Boston Magazine every September rates on a number of factors, the 150 school systems in the greater Boston area. And they rate them in various categories. Winthrop is generally in the bottom 20%.
Performance or budget or per student
Overall,
spending?
in terms of, pupil size, expenditures, scores, etc.
Okay, enterprise funds, people like, what, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just one thing on the schools too, a lot of the times it depends on the amount of revenue that a city or town is driving in, right? So there are things that we need to pay for in town, like police, fire, infrastructure, DPW, the schools, right? So it's the type of thing, the greater the pie, the more money we can put towards a slice of that pie. But where our pie is relatively small, we're working with how big the slice is gonna be. And I hope that metaphor makes sense, but obviously we want a larger pie so that the percentage can stay the same, but it's also more money in the end for the schools and all those other things that we talked about.
And that's a great point. I just want to talk about a little bit about where our money comes from, where the chunk of our money comes from. It's taxes, property taxes. And because we don't have a large commercial base in town, we have businesses, but we don't have a lot of businesses. We're not Revere, we're not Cambridge, we're not Boston. Commercial tax bases bring in a ton of money, and we just don't have that large commercial tax base. We're relying on residential tax base, and it can only go up, maximum 2.5% a year. And so we are on a very limited budget, and so balancing out what every department needs, and honestly, as part of the Finance Commission meetings, the department heads come in and they tell us what they need and what they've been appropriated by the town manager and that they could all use more money, and literally every single department that comes in, they're like, we really could use more. And it's heartbreaking, because we want to give as much money to the schools as we can, as much money as the police need, as much, the fire department. If I could just talk about the fire department for a bit. If you have a chance and if you have interest, I would recommend that you take a tour of the Winthrop Fire Department on Pauline Street. It's horrifying. It's embarrassing. And I'll talk about a little bit of our capital plan. It should have been replaced 25 years ago. I recently took a tour with Chief Wiley. He's our new chief of fire, and I took it with the other members. I forget which.
Barbara.
Councilor Aiello and Barbara Flockhart. And I just couldn't believe the state of our fire department, that where we expect our first responders to spend 12, 14-hour days, and it's dilapidated, black mold, rot, it's horrifying.
It's actually not to code.
It's not to code.
For their safety, there's a lot of stuff, but you know what? We're doing the best we can.
We're doing the best we can.
We're trying to get the money to be able to get a public safety building, and we are working diligently to try to get that done. Now that we have Tony Marino,
Yes.
he'll be able to get that implemented sooner than later, and it is a top priority. So.
Absolutely, and thank God it's a top priority. And I have no idea, Chief Flanagan had been in and been talking to the council for years he's been talking to the council about the need for a new fire station. And so I thought, I'm just gonna ask for a tour. And I was shocked. And Chief Wiley said to me, if you know of anybody who wants a tour so we can show them this person, please tell them, just let me know. And so if any of you feel so inclined, just let him know. He's a wonderful man. We're lucky to have him as chief, and give it a chance. So, enterprise funds. People talk, what's an enterprise fund? Basically, Enterprise fund is created when a public service generates sufficient revenues to pay for its cost. These are funded primarily through fees for services. There are 6 winter enterprise funds. There's the water sewer fund, the ferry, trash, parks and rec, the skating rink, harbor master waterways. So like the skating rink, for instance, to use a skating rink, you pay a fee, and it's self-supporting. So we give them money at the beginning of the year they have a budget, for appropriations, but they're expected, they have these expected earnings for use, and then they pay that back. So it's kind of a self-supporting, that's what an enterprise fund is. And then we have 6, and we've recently added the trash as an enterprise fund. So that was something, trash had been completely paid for out of the general fund in previous budgets, but we just made, I think last year, the trash,
An enterprise fund.
what we call it? The waste-
Self-sustaining?
Self-sustaining,
waste,
yeah, solid waste,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is it true though, Tracey, that every one of those enterprise funds are technically supposed to be self-sustaining at $0 additional benefit from the town?
Yes, and eventually, so brought up, so the water, the
Solid waste?
the solid waste, thank you. It's a relatively new enterprise fund,
Yep.
and it should be self-sufficient. We're getting there. We did, the fees that we're charging should get us to that self-sufficiency. But again, this year, they're designating $1 million because it's one of the highest costs. It's above DPW, it's probably right under fire. So those top 4 costs, if it wasn't school, police, fire, and DPW, it would be school, police, fire, and trash.
Wow.
That's how much trash costs. So trash is expensive.
Is trash more than water?
No. Oh, no, it's not. We'll see, we'll talk. So this is actually a water slide. So enterprise fund example, this is the water sewer enterprise fund, and I wish this was bigger so you could see.
I can make it larger.
Can we? Just a little bit. So the water sewer enterprise fund is funded through user fees issued to Winthrop homeowners. We all know that, right? We all get our water sewer bill, and that's how it's paid for. And we noticed that, or if you will notice that, the 2 MWRA assessments here, so these are the appropriations. This is what money is spent on, and this is the revenue that comes in. And the revenue comes in from our water sewer bills. And this is what it pays for. All these appropriations, so it pays for personnel, health insurance, pensions, workman's comp, contractual services, supplies, property insurance, debt service. In other words, water sewer projects that have happened, and we have to pay the principal and the interest on those. And that's a huge cost. As well as the MWRA water and sewer assessment, what the MWRA charges us. That's our bill, we have to pay our bill. So the biggest costs, in this appropriations list, are personnel for our water sewer department.
I'm just gonna see if I can make it larger.
Water sewer department, is that a component of the DPW, or is that under the umbrella of the DPW and, getting its own
It used-
resources? its own funding?
It used to be a separate department, and
Yes, I know
now
that.
it's part of the DPW.
So, but you're saying it gets a separate amount, or are you isolating the amount that's part of the DPW budget that is water resource?
So something like
Allocated.
personnel, there aren't any, and I just recently talked to Steve Calla about this, there aren't necessarily designated water sewer personnel,
Mhm.
because Steve is so short-staffed.
Hmm.
He used to have a much larger staff, but all departments are kind of shrinking. And people on the DPW are kind of wear many hats. And so part of their salary is coming from the water sewer personnel appropriation. Part of their salary is coming from, maybe the cemetery, depending on what their jobs are within it. And part of it's just the general DPW. Mr. Dapp.
Thank you. I was informed this morning that the DPW staff is down to 7 people.
Wow.
Is that true?
I don't know. Did you hear
That's
that
pretty
from? a
Well,
word?
if it was a well-informed person, of course, that's why I'm mentioning it, but.
And you can imagine, like, at DPW, they're running our town, right? And that's 7 people, for goodness sake, that's,
Well, don't quote me on that.
Okay.
I heard that this morning, I was asking you if you knew.
I don't
what it
know,
was,
but that sounds very low to me. And that would be shocking, that if our DPW is being run with 7 people. Because it does include cemetery and trees and water sewer and just upkeep of the town.
Why is that number so low? Is it because they don't have the money to pay other personnel, or is there another issue?
Is it just general staffing, people leaving, is
Because there
it?
seems to be a reoccurring issue in Winthrop, and that is that our payroll is lower than most places, especially Massport. Like, police probably has the same problem as fire, as DPW does. We end up paying like next to minimum wage, and for pretty high-end jobs that they can get 20 to 30% more at Massport or in the different cities. So what we end up being is like a training ground that people just stepping stone off to the next place.
So you can't attract people.
Right,
can't
and then
attract
they
and-
scalp our good people.
Yeah, and then they scalp our good people, and then we're just left with, you know, young people that with a few heads.
Excuse me.
What happens with the schools too?
That's,
Yeah.
the school system's a great example of that as well. The point I was gonna make too is just when it comes to general staffing, that's not something that the council has a sort of day-to-day say in. The only employee that reports directly to the council is the town manager, and the town manager is then tasked with staffing all the individual departments. So, yeah,
It's
Tracy
basically who
sits.
they report to.
Right, all of the town employees report up through to the town manager, so, you know, we're doing, I think any of the responses that you hear from us are sort of some of the same kind of ideas or thoughts that any of you may have. We don't have any sort of insider information
I
into
do.
the staffing level.
I think
Maybe
I'm just
Jack.
I'm gonna reiterate what Steve said to the camera too. Just so you know, any type of responses that we have regarding town management is not really our purview. We are town legislators, and so what we do is we vote upon stuff that is presented to us, and we are, you know, tasked with, you know, helping move things along, but we don't actually know the day-to-day administration stuff. So as far as personnel at DPW, we have no idea, per se.
Thank you, but I was also informed this morning that the numbers are getting low, but the funding is still there.
Mhm.
Perhaps someone can figure out how to attract new employees with higher wages because the funding is still there.
Yes. And that's my understanding as well, that the positions are there, positions are there to be
The
filled
funding is still
and,
there.
and paid,
So in
yes.
other words, if you lost 7 people, perhaps you could hire 3.5 and give them a little bit of increase. I was told it's about $17 an hour. In my, you know, brief history of working, if you wanted a job with the T years ago, you had to pay to get the job.
Mm.
Now they can't find people
Yeah.
to drive, to be employed at the T. So we're in a situation here that we're stuck a little bit with low wages, people not wanting to join in the service for low wages. The wages have to be increased.
Certainly, yeah, especially for hard labor, which it is, it's hard
I
physical
mean,
labor.
you wanna get in a water hole for $17 an hour?
Right, right.
That's dangerous
I agree
stuff.
with you.
Thank you.
Just, I don't wanna harp on this too much more, but to Jack's point, this isn't necessarily just a Winthrop problem. This is a United States employment problem. There are a lot of
macroeconomic
jobs
issue.
out there for people to go and get, but, you know, I work for a private company and we have staffing issues and like anything
So do I.
I've ever else seen before, right? And
Yeah.
so, that's not an excuse by any means, but this isn't a Winthrop specific issue that we're talking about.
Can't cut grass on Zoom.
That's right. That's right.
Can you get that in there?
Yeah,
Oh, that's okay. So a little bit about the capital plan, I mentioned about the 5-year capital plan that's also, sorry.
Before you proceed on that, and following up on Steve's thought too, and the fact that, you know, the departure of certain DPW workers, and they do work hard, and Steve does try to keep his staff motivated, and I have, I think, a good rapport with him in other matters concerning beautification and flowers around the town. But it would seem to me that if the town council or the town manager can have a DPW appreciation night, bring these people in and say, you know, everybody thanks you for the work that you're doing, we understand you're
We'll
short-staffed.
host a barbecue
working
right here,
hard.
Frank. I'll put that to my
I
Oddfellows
mean, I think that would
crew.
be
I think, yeah,
a
they're
much
kind of
appreciated
I like
gesture.
that idea.
unsung
Mhm.
group of people. You know, we celebrate fire, we celebrate police, we celebrate a lot
We
of
could
people
go right down
in
the
town,
line.
but we,
Yep.
I haven't heard of anybody ever kind of celebrating our DPW
I don't
workers
think
for the
that-
hard work they do.
We'll ask Steve first. He might say, get out of here.
Well, don't invite him, that's all, invite all his workers.
But we'll host a barbecue. We did it for the first responders, and I know right now that those people in the ambulances,
Yeah,
those EMTs don't get enough credit. They were on the scene first.
They were
right
there,
there,
they-
and they get a lot of, they don't get the same kind of credit, they deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah,
And I think first responders deserve a big, it's a big round of,
Yeah.
we had you guys here, we invited you guys, because I know the fire department was here, and we just, it's a big part of it. Same with teachers, I mean, I wish teachers could have a teacher appreciation night,
yes.
but it's not enough to just do a pat on the back, Frank, no
Mhm.
offense, but I
Mhm.
think that a barbecue, a public thank you is wonderful, but
Mhm.
what pays the bills
Yeah.
makes people happy.
Right,
And that's how you sustain a decent life, a
Mhm.
good living, an honorable living. There's only so many perks we can give, you know, so maybe you do a good career education incentives while you can't pay top wages. Winthrop's got the same issues everyone else does, but I'll tell you right now,
mhm,
and I'll say this for, on a personal and professional level, if people say thank you, you wanna work there a lot more.
that's right,
And if
that's
you're
right.
appreciated,
That's
and you
right.
don't feel like you have to be muzzled,
Mhm.
and you can actually do your job well, you are appreciated and you want to come back to work every day.
Exactly.
And that matters.
And these are our, not only our community members, this is our family and our friends. This is a
Yeah.
small community. We
Mhm.
know these people, these are,
Mhm.
yeah, we are these people. These are
Yeah,
our
exactly,
family
we
friends.
are
So-
these people, that's well said.
And so Winthrop is so small that it's such a community, but appreciation goes a long way.
Yeah. Well, now that we solved the world's problems, you wanna move on to the next slide?
Yeah, I'm almost done. So, capital plan. The budget includes a capital plan, it's a 5-year capital plan, and that's all about, talks about everything from capital projects, equipment, building upgrades, all that stuff, and they identify all these potential things that need to happen, potential capital plan improvements, and the capital plan, town manager, creates the capital budget plan, talks to the town council about it, talks to the town council president. The capital plan should be reviewed and updated annually because priorities change, emergencies happen, prices for services and goods increase, as we know with COVID, the whole supply chain issue is been a problem. And the plan uses multiple sources of revenue, so we have a capital stabilization fund that we take most of the money from. But there's also state and federal grants that help with capital planning and capital improvement. And there has been a recent push to strengthen the planning for capital upgrades and improvements, so that it's more proactive than reactive. We all know, if you're a homeowner, and your porch is getting kind of raggedy, and you're not gonna wait till it falls down, because then there's a real problem. You're not gonna wait till somebody falls through your porch to make those upgrades and maintain it. You're gonna maintain it as it needs to be maintained, and that's something, because we're short on funds, we haven't been really maintaining our capital assets like we should. And things are kind of, like the fire department, kind of, way beyond their use life. And so it's something that Councilor Aiello specifically, Councilor Aiello is the Precinct 5 counselor, and he's really been pushing for more focus on the capital plan, capital improvements, getting a list of our capital assets, status, where they are, what they need, and in order to prioritize. And so that's something that hasn't been done, that needs to be done. It's something, like you said, those of us that are homeowners, we know, you don't let something fall into the ground before you start thinking about improving it. So we need to be more proactive than reactive. Capital planning is very broad, but we're trying to maintain our existing assets, whether they're vehicles or buildings.
Speaking of the issue of restorative or maintenance needs, Tracy, I have to admit, since I'm across the street and I see it all the time out of my office, that the facade over the garage area of the police station has been falling apart for about 5 years now.
Yep.
And whatever maintenance budget or whatever appropriation that should have happened 5 years ago has yet to occur.
Yep.
And I know windows have been put in along the Winthrop Street side, but, that's sort of stopped. So I think the police station, along with town hall, the fire station, and other public facilities, the cultural center, et cetera, as well as the fantastic schools that have been built, those are our public outfits, and those
Right.
should be in well-maintained condition. And the
Absolutely.
police station looks awful.
It really does.
Yeah.
And just to go back to the fire station, so that we are working towards a new public safety building to include both police and fire, and it is both stations. It's a shame that we're asking our first responders to be in these dilapidated buildings. And we've been Band-Aiding, and not even Band-Aiding, and sometimes we've just been letting it bleed, So we really need a new public safety building, and we've needed one for some time. It's about the money appropriation, it's about getting Tony Marino on the case. Tony Marino, actually in Ipswich, he built a public safety building recently.
Yes.
And building a public safety building is a huge undertaking, a lot of planning. We did have 2 different sites in town that we looked at, or for public safety building, neither one of those was
On
feasible.
Marshland, yes.
Neither one was feasible, and it was
Mhm.
gonna be just tremendous costs in regards to environmental impact, and environmental
Yes.
remediation, so
Yes.
it really needs to be looked at with, somebody with a lot more experience and knowledge, and Tony Marino, I think, is our guy.
Okay, can I make a point on that, by the way, because I did discuss this with Chief
Yeah.
Flanagan, 2 or 3 years ago, and that is that find a way, and I discussed it with some other, local businessmen in this area, to find a way to work with the existing station where it could be improved, because it is a historic structure, it is a significant element within the community itself. The police station, which was built by the federal government as a post office, is also a, well-structured, it's a 400-year-old building, okay, in that its life, its durability, the way it was constructed, should last for quite a long while. I think a feasibility study, and there should be designers and architects, whether it's, and Bob Carroll should be able to give you advice on that. There should be a study that's done to find a way to integrate between the sites of the fire station and on down to Fremont Street, coming all the way back up to the police station, and whether the third floor could be added to the police station, for example, and other parking areas. Paul Flanagan did admit that obtaining property behind the buildings, the adjacent buildings would be plenty enough for the larger fire trucks that the town desperately needs. And I think as far as the integrated elements that are there in terms of, the services, the heating, the electrical, the wireless and other communication needs that are all installed right now, they can build on that and improve those, but then see how that whole business can be integrated.
And
Can I
that's certainly on
interject?
the list, certainly.
May I interject? Just because I know that that's already being reviewed as a very distinct possibility, I think
Mhm.
that the most cost-effective and
Right.
most effective period
Mhm.
solution will be found. I don't think it's gonna be one of those things where someone's gonna like force an agenda, like to get this overbuilt mausoleum in here for $60 million.
Right,
When we could pull off the whole thing effectively with the department head's approval
right.
and a professional, developer's,
Mhm.
proposal
Mhm.
to get something done that is the best solution. And that can include what you just said,
Mhm.
that's repurposing and enhancing and improving what we already have, as opposed to just finding something brand new to expand upon.
Mhm.
So, but that property that's behind the fire department has been looked at. There's, a lot of options being looked at. So I don't think this is gonna be a myopic railroad. This is gonna be a pretty well thought out project with all the options on the table. And I trust that a good solution will come to, our public knowledge soon.
Yeah, and there will be public hearings, and I recommend, if you have specific ideas, please feel free to meet with.
I have none.
Okay.
But please feel free to meet with Tony Marino. He's our new town manager, he's fantastic, he's got a lot of experience, so
I
any,
did a cost analysis with a very large construction firm on the North Shore. They did come down to visit Winthrop, myself and Richie Farino, walked through a number of items. And the cost analysis for building on top of the existing police station would be a quarter of the cost of a ground up, build up of a police station. Now, I'm not talking about the fire department, that's a completely different thing. But Joey Aiello even agreed that there should be maybe 2 separate sites. Instead of building this $60 or $100 million big, huge, service, you could use the existing footprint of the police station, and you can use all utilities that go into that building.
Right.
Everything's there for you. You wouldn't have to block a street, because they could do all the work from the back side of the parking lot and the driveway. So I've been saying this for 2 or 3 years, that type of information, which I've been talking about for 3 years, should be looked at. We just went through this, I don't know how this cost analysis did down at the marshland, it must have cost $1, and now that money's gone.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I've been saying for 3 years, or 4 or 5 maybe, that investigate building on top of the existing police station, and then take up the firehouses after that. You might
Sure.
find something more useful than what you have there. And as far as I made a note here, what you said, you mentioned there was black mold in the fire department building,
Yes.
and if I've been to 1,000 jobs, and if I see black mold, either I attack it or somebody else does before I work there. I'm certainly not gonna risk my life
Right.
Exactly.
For somebody, you know, to say, oh, we gotta fix
It's a
this, well,
health
get rid of the black mold first,
Yeah.
and then I'll come in and help you. So that should be
Top priority.
immediate.
Yeah.
A lot should
If
be
something,
immediate.
well, black mold should be an immediate cure, and there's many different ways to do it, hire a company, and have the company give you a cost, and get rid of it. There's no sense in having a building with black mold, that's, you know,
Mr. Dowd, I would recommend, I would ask that you meet with Tony Marino.
Yeah.
I think your institutional knowledge, your historical knowledge could be a big help to him. You know, he's very new to the town, and he's new to all of it. And so, and all of that information would be very helpful to him,
if other people would talk about it, I'd appreciate it.
certainly.
Thank you.
All right, I think this is one of my last slides. I was gonna end here. I know I went long. Thank you for listening.